Education is my very, very favorite topic. And that makes me kind of sad this week because if you can't hear already, my voice is not okay. I've got the whatever cold congestion thing that's been making its way around. I barely got out of bed yesterday, but I really wanted to make sure that this lecture is ready for all of you. So here I am with my really lousy sounding voice. I guess it's always annoying, but now it's even worse. But I want to talk about education in relation to structural inequalities and families. Families count on the education system, right? You can see this quote in front of you about from Bell Hooks about the possibilities of what you can create in a classroom. Families are counting on the education system, and the education system is largely predicated on assuming that families are going to fill in all the blanks for any student at any time. And that's just not necessarily the case. Something like times tables. We've had Common Core math now for years, and Common Core is kind of predicated on you've got all the, like, you are capable of all the basics, and now we're going to build on it, right? Well, the kids don't have all the basics. Right? They don't necessarily have the times tables, just absolutely rote memorization. They don't necessarily have the basics because possibly they have a family that doesn't have the resources, doesn't have the time, doesn't have the job flexibility, doesn't have the knowledge themselves in some cases, right? To do all of that work with their child, with the student. But the school system is assuming that they will. And so that really, really ends up in some significant inequalities overall between families and the school system. So, one of the ways that this kind of leaks out that you don't necessarily realize until you start to see it is mission statements. And so I figured you, of course, have Cal State Long Beach's mission statement memorized, right? Right? Have you even seen it ever? Do you even know where it is? It's on the website. The only reason I've ever seen it is because I went looking for it because I do a mission statement activity in my on campus classes. Here it is. Here, this is actually the old version, weirdly enough. So take a look at it for a second. I really love how it ends. Service for the people of California and the world. Here it is. It actually changed in the last couple of years to a mission and a vision statement. But if you kind of, I'm going to go back. If you kind of look, it's kind of the same almost, except they divided it up. I don't get it. But what's a mission statement? A mission statement is the school saying, this is our goal. Right? This is who we want to be. And so I'm going to share with you, these are two schools in Orange County. When you see 2012, that's the last year that we had like standardized tests that like everybody, that was the most important thing for a school was their standardized test scores. And they just tried and tried and tried to get the highest standardized test scores that they could. A perfect score in those days was 1,000. So you can see the school on the left, 660, and the school on the right, 995. You can see the percentage of students that identify as English language learners, that English is not the first language spoken in a home. You can see the percentage of families that have been deemed socioeconomically disadvantaged. And then when you see the CAST scores, that's the current standardized testing. And you can see on the right, please note that's not 15% with English, that's 0.15. So the school on the left-hand side is a high school, Santa Ana High School. And the school on the right-hand side is Oxford Academy, which is a junior high and high school. It's a public school. It's in the Anaheim Union High School District. Students get invited in um, from like various schools in the district, and then I believe they can apply to go to school there from outside the district. And so take a look at both mission statements, and you start to see the inequalities inherent in the words, right? Santa Ana, so they recognize their capacity to contribute to their community while creating a plan for success in high school and beyond. Oxford Academy, one of the strongest schools in the United States, right? What words are we seeing? Rigorous educational program, emphasis on mastery of academics, like critical thinking, effective communication skills. You can see the inequality there. Families are counting on schools. Not everybody gets into Oxford. In fact, they only take the very most successful students. That doesn't necessarily mean that the families have a ton of resources. It's a public school. But it's predicated on success. The entire school is predicated on success. It's not the situation for every school in Orange County. It's not the situation for every school in LA County. It's not the situation for every school in the United States. And so, kind of thinking through, we oftentimes really we're very judgmental about schools. Think about your own school district that you went to. Were there good schools? Good. I'm like putting in quotations, like, oh, the good school, or I went to the bad school. I hate that we do that, but we do that. And especially with open enrollment and families getting to, because school districts want to keep families, they'll say, you can go to any school in our district. Then you really get that dichotomy between the good school and the bad school. A lot of times, the difference between the schools is the resources of the families that go to them. It makes a big difference to a school when you can raise, $70,000 with a jogathon versus like seven. It makes a big, big difference. And it gets really, really interesting when you think about the intersection of families and family resources in relation to educational opportunities. So going back to that 2012 API score, with the last year that uh, that like standardized tests were so important to schools. Like you would wait till the beginning of the next school year that the scores would come out. Like you were had goals constantly. You could be in like program improvement for years. I think the threat was if you were in program improvement because you weren't getting high enough scores that the state can come over and like redo the entire school, kick out all the teachers, all this stuff. Like you kind of were living in fear, to be honest. Well, my daughter was in her freshman year of high school in this last year of these standardized test scores. And so this is a letter that got sent home. I scanned it and I saved it. On the right hand side, what you're seeing is an incentive program. Because why do kids care about standardized test scores? Tests are dumb, right? Students are about to start taking standardized tests in schools for the year in like the next week or two, like as they come back from spring break. But it's tedious, question after question after question. Well, what they're trying to do is they're trying to incentivize students. Because what have you got? Oh, if we get this test score, we can have ice cream. You know what I mean? So here's what they said. If you score really, really strongly on your standardized test, you can go back to your math or English teacher. Maybe you got to be in their class in the fall. And you can be like, Mr. and Miss so and so, look at my standard test score. It was so high. The teacher does not have to say yes, but you can ask them, will you switch my fall grade from a B to an A, from a C to a B? That's how they were trying to incentivize students, that they could possibly petition to get a higher grade from the semester before. But now let's look over to the front of the letter on the left and look at number 4. You see it? Your real estate values are positively impacted if your neighborhood school has a high API score. And they're not lying. That's if you were to Google API scores, like the websites that came up were like Redfin and Zillow. They're not lying. But basically what they're telling families, and this is a school that had diverse socioeconomics, like, but what they're telling families is you'll be richer. Your house will be worth more if your kid does well on standardized test scores. So it's kind of interesting to see this link between families and schools happen right here with this letter that I received as a parent. That they're trying to go like, please, 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 we need high standardized test scores. Trying to get you to get your kid there on time and, good breakfast and slept well the night before and number 2 pencil and like ready to go. Everything's done on the computer now. But still, thinking about this is actually what I did my graduate research on. This particular book, Subtractive Schooling, I got to take sociology of education as both an undergrad and a graduate student. And it has this theme throughout it of care. And it says at one point how important it is for, certainly like that teachers won't be able to truly care about students unless administrators really care about the teachers, the assistant principals and principals and things like that, which I have found to be very, very true, especially being married to a junior high teacher, how important that kind of leadership can be to creating a whole culture. But my graduate research was predicated on the question, well, what about parents? Who cares about parents? Right? And so that's what I did research into. I did observations of IEP meetings. Those are meetings for students receiving special education services. And I sat there and I tried to pay attention specifically for what were all the little pieces of information, like all the little tips and tricks and hints that teachers were giving to parents in those meetings. And then what I did, because I didn't do a thesis, I did a project. I gathered that all together and I made a resource for the department that introduced the department to incoming families and said, here, are a whole bunch of pieces of advice to help your student be successful going forward. Here's all of our names. Here's all of our phone numbers. There's, translators available, like really trying to welcome parents in and make them feel cared about. Because we have a great discrepancy with that in relation to resources and families in our education system. We act like parents that can't show up to be volunteers or can't donate to the jogathon, or student is struggling. We act like parents don't care. We make really big assumptions about that, and that's not the case. A lot of times it comes down to family stressors and family resources and lower socioeconomic status. And so kind of thinking through this particular aspect of families and education, that families are counting on the education system, right? But unfortunately, the education system is kind of sitting there needing families to have resources that a lot of families unfortunately do not.